My brothers and sisters, there comes a moment in every generation when we must pause and ask ourselves not only where we come from, but who we are called to become. Across the vast lands of Africa, from the villages to the great cities, there beats a question older than empires and deeper than oceans, a question of identity, of faith, and of belonging. Many among our people have looked at their history, their traditions, their struggles, and their unshakable spirit, and have felt a profound connection to the ancient tribes of Israel, not as a claim of superiority, but as a search for meaning, as a bridge between the wounds of the past and the destiny that awaits. For centuries, we have been told what we are not. We have been separated, divided, and made to forget the power that flows in our veins. But today, we stand in a new dawn, one where the African spirit rises with renewed clarity. Whether this connection is found through faith, through heritage, or through the echoes of our ancestors, it speaks to a truth buried within the hearts of millions, that our story is not small, our identity is not accidental, and our journey is guided by something far greater than circumstance. I speak to you now with the belief that every man, every woman, and every child across this continent carries within them a spark of divine purpose. The question before us is not merely about lineage. It is about awakening. Awakening to our strength, awakening to our unity, and awakening to the unbreakable faith that has sustained our people through centuries of trials. If we dare to listen to that inner voice, if we dare to rise above the doubts placed upon us, we will discover that our identity is not lost. It is waiting to be reclaimed. Let this be the moment when your heart leans forward, when your spirit opens, and when you begin to see yourself not as history has painted you, but as destiny has designed you. Across the African continent, the search for identity has always been more than a curiosity. It is a journey of dignity, a quest for belonging, and a reclaiming of stories long buried beneath the sands of time. When many Africans speak of their connection to the ancient tribes of Israel, they do so not merely from a place of historical speculation, but from a deep well of cultural memory, shared struggle, and spiritual resonance. This belief is born from generations of oral traditions, ancient customs that mirror biblical practices, and a powerful sense that their ancestors walked a path that intertwined with the destiny of Israel. For many, this connection is not about proving lineage through documents or debates. It is about understanding why their hearts, their faith, and their lived experiences reflect a journey similar to that of a people who endured exile, captivity, liberation, and divine promise. Identity is not just a label, it is a source of strength. When a people understand who they are, they rise with greater confidence, purpose, and unity. Across Africa, where colonialism and slavery attempted to erase names, languages, and heritage, the rediscovery of identity has become a form of healing. To see oneself reflected in the resilience of the Israelites, who suffered oppression, displacement, and yet rose again, gives many Africans a framework for understanding their own endurance. It allows them to say, we have survived because we were meant to survive. We have endured because our story did not end in suffering. We rise because rising is written into our spirit. The power of ancestry is not simply about biological roots, but about spiritual inheritance. It is the belief that one's past carries wisdom, courage, and divine purpose. When elders tell stories of ancient rituals, circumcision traditions, naming ceremonies, purification practices, inheritance customs, many hear echoes of the Old Testament and feel a deeper connection form. These parallels do not demand absolute historical certainty. Instead, they offer meaning, belonging, and a sense of continuity that bridges centuries. For the African child growing up amid questions of identity, this belief becomes a source of pride. It says, "You are not lost. You are not without history. You are not without destiny." It teaches that no matter how many times the world has tried to strip away dignity, the roots remain strong. And when roots are strong, the tree can rise again, taller, firmer, and reaching toward the sky. This connection to the ancient tribes of Israel gives many Africans a narrative that affirms their worth. It reminds them that identity is not determined by what others call you, but by what you know in your heart. It calls them to stand with courage, to honor their elders, to protect their heritage, and to walk with faith that their journey is guided by something sacred. In reclaiming this identity, Africans everywhere are rediscovering a truth long whispered by their ancestors. You come from strength. You come from purpose. You come from a story greater than your struggles. Throughout history, people have drawn strength from the stories of those who walked before them, especially when their struggles reflect their own. For many Africans, the journey of the ancient tribes of Israel feels deeply familiar, not because of geography or politics, but because both peoples have endured trials that tested the soul and shaped their destiny. When we speak of shared struggles, we speak of a universal longing for freedom, dignity, and recognition. The Israelites lived under oppression, exile, and hardship, yet their story became one of liberation, renewal, and hope. Africans across the continent and the diaspora see reflections of their own past in this narrative. Centuries of colonization, displacement, slavery, segregation, and exploitation that sought to break the spirit, but instead forged resilience. The parallel begins with the experience of bondage. Just as the Israelites suffered under the weight of Pharaoh, millions of Africans lived under systems that denied their humanity. Families were separated, cultures were suppressed, and voices were silenced. But in the midst of these dark chapters, something remarkable happened. The human spirit refused to die. Resistance movements rose like Moses before the Red Sea, determined, courageous, and guided by a belief that no power on earth can imprison the soul forever. This shared defiance, this shared hope, becomes a bridge between the two stories. And then comes the wilderness, a period of wandering, uncertainty, and rebuilding. For Israel, the wilderness served as a place of transformation, shaping them into a people prepared for promise. For Africans, the wilderness came in many forms: the aftermath of colonial rule, the challenges of redefining nations, the rebuilding of shattered communities, and the quest to reclaim what was lost. In these moments, the world expected despair, yet Africans showed the same resilience seen in the ancient Israelites. They created new identities from stolen fragments, revived cultures that had been threatened, and formed nations with determination and pride. Liberation, too, forms a powerful parallel. The Israelites crossed into the Promised Land not because they were untouched by suffering, but because they understood that struggle is often the price of destiny. Africans, too, achieved independence through sacrifice, unity, and unwavering faith in a future shaped by their own hands. This ongoing journey of liberation continues today. Not only political liberation, but liberation of the mind, spirit, and identity. It is a journey toward reclaiming dignity, rewriting narratives, and standing tall in a world that once sought to push them down. In the end, these shared struggles do not suggest identical histories, but interconnected experiences. Both peoples demonstrate that oppression cannot silence purpose, and suffering cannot erase identity. The story of Israel becomes a mirror that reflects the strength of Africa, a continent that rises again and again, refusing to let adversity define its destiny. Through this connection, Africans draw inspiration to continue their journey with courage, unity, and unbreakable hope, knowing that every challenge faced is another step toward a future filled with promise. Faith has always been one of humanity's most powerful bridges, linking generations, shaping identity, and giving meaning to struggles that might otherwise break the spirit. For many Africans who feel a connection to the ancient tribes of Israel, faith becomes a thread woven through centuries of memory, guiding them from the wounds of the past toward the promise of a brighter future. This connection is not simply an intellectual idea. It is a lived experience that shapes how people love, how they endure, and how they hope. Faith becomes the lamp that lights the path forward, even when history casts long shadows behind. In communities across the continent, spirituality is more than ritual. It is heritage. It is the echo of ancestors who prayed through hardship, who preserved traditions, who believed that every storm eventually ends. This deep spiritual consciousness naturally draws many Africans to stories that mirror their own. Stories like those of ancient Israel, where people walked through trials yet held firmly to a divine promise. The Israelites endured slavery, exile, and uncertainty, but their faith became the force that carried them from brokenness to restoration. In the same way, African communities have held on to faith throughout colonial oppression, displacement, and cultural erasure, finding comfort in the belief that suffering is never the final chapter. Faith is also a bridge because it creates collective identity. It reminds individuals that they belong to something larger than themselves, something eternal. When Africans read biblical narratives, they often see themselves reflected in the courage of prophets, the endurance of exiles, and the leadership of those who guided their people toward freedom. This reflection strengthens the sense of connection, not necessarily because of bloodline, but because of shared spiritual experience. Faith binds people together in unity, reminding them that destiny is achieved not through individual strength alone, but through community and shared belief. Moreover, faith inspires vision. It allows people to imagine a future beyond the limitations they currently face. For many Africans, seeing themselves within a lineage of resilience gives them the courage to rise above present struggles, poverty, conflict, or discrimination, and strive for a future filled with dignity and purpose. Faith teaches that the same divine force that guided ancient Israel through the wilderness can also guide Africa through its own challenges. It whispers that hope is not naive but necessary, that progress is possible, and that destiny unfolds for those who walk with conviction. Faith also preserves cultural memory. It ensures that stories, values, and lessons are passed from one generation to the next. In many African homes, elders teach children not only about their tribes and ancestors, but about the spiritual principles that shape their identity, principles of justice, compassion, perseverance, and reverence for the divine. These values reflect the biblical traditions many feel connected to, reinforcing the belief that their past is intertwined with the journey of Israel. Ultimately, faith stands as a powerful, unbreakable bridge, one that links the past with the future, heritage with destiny, and identity with hope. It is this faith that continues to inspire Africans everywhere to rise, rebuild, and reclaim their place in the story of humanity. Across Africa, culture has long been the heartbeat of identity, passed from elder to youth, carried in songs, protected in rituals, and preserved in the quiet wisdom of the ancestors. When many Africans explore their possible connection to the ancient tribes of Israel, they often point first not to written documents, but to the living traditions that have survived countless generations. These cultural echoes woven into daily life, offer subtle yet powerful reminders of a heritage that resonates deeply with biblical customs. Oral traditions especially serve as the sacred bridge between memory and identity, keeping alive the stories that textbooks could never fully contain. In many African communities, the act of remembering is an art. Elders become living libraries, trusted to safeguard the histories of clans, families, and ancient practices. They narrate stories of migrations, battles, bonds, and divine encounters, stories that, in their rhythm and symbolism, resemble the oral histories of ancient Israel. Before the Bible was written, the Israelites too preserved their identity through spoken word. They passed their stories across generations, ensuring that every child understood where they came from and who their ancestors were. This shared reverence for storytelling becomes one of the strongest cultural links between African traditions and the Hebrew past. Rituals also reveal striking echoes. Circumcision ceremonies, practiced widely across the continent, resemble the covenantal rituals described in the Old Testament. These ceremonies are not merely cultural. They represent transition, identity, and divine commitment, just as they did for the ancient Israelites. Naming rituals, too, reflect deep spiritual significance. In many African cultures, names are not chosen casually. They carry meanings tied to circumstances of birth, ancestral spirits, or divine purpose. This aligns closely with Hebrew traditions, where names often revealed destiny or reflected moments of divine intervention. Purification practices, dietary customs, and community celebrations also mirror ancient biblical ways. In some African societies, specific foods are avoided for spiritual reasons, echoing the dietary laws found in ancient Israel. Festivals marking harvests, first fruits, or major life transitions often contain symbolic gestures seen in Hebrew ceremonies. These parallels do not prove a direct lineage, but they strengthen the feeling among many Africans that their cultural pathways may have once intersected with those of the tribes of Israel. Oral tradition continues to serve as a guardian of identity, especially in places where colonialism attempted to erase or replace indigenous knowledge. Despite the hardships, African families kept their customs alive through whispered prayers, through the beat of drums, through rites performed in quiet forests or village centers. These traditions remind many Africans that their history did not begin with colonization or slavery. It stretches far beyond, touching ancient stories long before foreign powers arrived. In recognizing these cultural echoes, Africans reclaim dignity and connection. They see themselves not as people without history, but as inheritors of rich traditions that survive because they mattered. These echoes whisper that identity is not lost. It is carried in rituals, spoken in stories, and remembered in the spirit of the people. And through these echoes, many Africans find strength, pride, and a sense of belonging that stretches back to ancient times. Across the vast and diverse continent of Africa, unity has always been both a challenge and a calling. With hundreds of tribes, languages, landscapes, and histories, Africa is a tapestry woven from countless threads, each unique, each beautiful. Yet despite these differences, there is a powerful truth that echoes through time. Africans share a collective destiny. Whether or not one traces their roots to ancient Israel or to any other lineage, the mission that lies before the continent is far greater than debates of origin. It is a mission rooted in dignity, upliftment, and restoration. A mission that calls every African to rise above division and walk toward a shared future. Unity beyond tribes is not about erasing identity, it is about strengthening it. Every tribe, every culture, every region brings wisdom that enriches the soul of the continent. But when identity becomes a barrier instead of a blessing, divisions deepen. History has shown how tribal conflicts, colonial manipulation, and political rivalries have weakened nations from within. The lesson is clear. Africa cannot rise if it is divided against itself. The ancient Israelites understood this as well. 12 tribes, each different, yet unified by a greater purpose. Their strength came not from sameness, but from solidarity. In the same way, Africa's power emerges when its people see beyond tribal names and recognize the shared humanity that binds them. Unity also means healing wounds, both old and new. Many African countries still carry scars from civil wars, tribal tensions, and forced borders drawn by colonial powers. But unity asks us to step forward with forgiveness, understanding, and a determination to build something better than what was broken. It asks us to see each other not as adversaries, but as brothers and sisters walking the same long road toward progress. It invites leaders to seek peace over pride and communities to value collaboration over conflict. This unity is essential for upliftment. Poverty, inequality, corruption, and underdevelopment do not discriminate by tribe. They affect all. When Africans stand together, resources are shared, knowledge is multiplied, and solutions become collective achievements. Unity inspires innovation, strengthens economies, and gives young people hope. It reminds every African child that their future is connected to the well-being of the entire continent. Beyond all this, unity gives Africa a powerful voice on the global stage. A divided continent whispers. A united continent roars. When Africans speak as one, with shared purpose, shared vision, and shared dignity, they command respect in a world that has too often underestimated them. And as faith plays a central role in many communities, unity also becomes a spiritual calling, a reminder that humanity is stronger when bound by compassion, justice, and love. In the end, unity beyond borders and tribes invites Africans to rise above what separates them and embrace what connects them. It calls them to build a continent where diversity becomes strength, where cooperation replaces conflict, and where every voice contributes to a shared destiny. It is through this unity that Africa will not only reclaim its identity, but also rise into the greatness that has always been its birthright. Every generation reaches a moment when it must decide whether to be shaped by the wounds of its past or the dreams of its future. For Africans everywhere, that moment is now. The question of ancestry, lineage, or connection to ancient tribes may inspire curiosity and pride, but the greater calling is far deeper, to rise with purpose. Purpose is the force that transforms identity into action, faith into courage, and history into destiny. It is the voice within that whispers to every man, woman, and child, "You were made for more than survival. You were made to build, to uplift, and to lead." Rising with purpose begins with the understanding that true greatness is not inherited, it is created. A person may be inspired by the strength of their ancestors, but they must still choose the path they walk. Africa's story has been marked by struggle, colonization, injustice, exploitation, and displacement. Yet, in every chapter of this story, the African spirit has refused to be defeated. This resilience is not accidental, it is purposeful. It serves as a reminder that the continent's destiny is not tied to suffering, but to the strength that suffering produced. Purpose turns pain into wisdom, loss into motivation, and challenges into stepping stones toward a better future. To rise with purpose also means embracing justice as a sacred responsibility. Justice is not merely a principle. It is a commitment to create a world where dignity is protected, opportunities are equal, and every community can flourish. Africans are called to challenge systems that oppress, to confront corruption, and to restore fairness where it has been denied. When people act with justice, they honor not only their ancestors, but also the generations yet to come. This pursuit becomes a form of leadership, quiet, steady, and transformational. Courage, too, is at the heart of purpose. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. It is the bravery to speak truth, to dream boldly, and to stand firm when the world pushes back. Africa needs courageous hearts, young people unafraid to break cycles, leaders willing to serve with integrity, and communities determined to protect their heritage. Courage allows individuals to rise above limitations and walk toward the future with confidence, no matter how uncertain the path may seem. Unbreakable faith becomes the final pillar of purposeful living. Faith is the anchor that holds steady when storms try to pull people into despair. It is the belief that life has meaning, that progress is possible, and that the divine has not abandoned the journey. Faith empowers people to see beyond current struggles and trust that they are part of a much larger story, one filled with promise, restoration, and victory. This kind of faith fuels purpose. It fills the heart with strength and keeps the spirit from giving up. Ultimately, rising with purpose is an invitation to step into a greater version of oneself, to build communities that reflect hope, and to shape a continent that stands tall with dignity. It is a call for Africans everywhere to embrace their identity, honor their roots, and move forward, not as victims of history, but as authors of a new and powerful chapter.